Hey, church family, Pastor Ross back, and I've been meaning to do a third and final discussion on our bookstore and the books that we have in there. The first two talked about kind of just Christian doctrines in specific fashion, then also summary books on just Christian theology as a whole. But there's a lot of practical, apologetic, devotional books we have in the library, actually in the bookstore as well, that I want to commend to you. And as the holidays approach, might be thinking about some things to gift to folks in your family or friends that you have. I know I always appreciate those gifts during the holidays myself. But I thought I'd start with just a couple practical books for you all to think and consider. The first one is a great book by Sinclair Ferguson called Deserted by God. And it really goes through, it's $12. It really goes through the basics of the Psalms, but in a very devotional and practical manner of how does this apply to the seeming sense of God deserting me or kind of being aloof in my life, and that happens quite often. Very, very good book. The book that's helped me return to Christ over and over and continue down that path that He wants, even in the midst of great personal challenge or feeling abandoned by the Lord. These next two books are by Kevin DeYoung, and I think both of them are outstanding, and they have different focuses. The first one is a very practical book on homosexuality that talks against the culture about one, how the culture views homosexuality, sure, but more pertinently, how it twists the scriptures to try to teach that the scriptures either are saying something that they're not or not saying something that they are. And this is a very easy, short book that gets to the heart of that. The Bible is not unclear about this area of living and about this sin. Okay, the Bible's very clear about it. So DeYoung does a good job in this book. The second one has, and that one's actually just $8. The second one's for $5, and this is called Crazy Busy, and a very good book on just how to understand the busyness of life and to put busyness in its place. And it's a very helpful, simple book you can read in one or two sittings. See how short these books are. And just for $5, a very helpful, practical book if you're someone who struggles with being overly busy for busyness' sake. There are seasons of busyness, yes, but if you're always busy, I don't know if that's what the Lord is always wanting in our lives. So in these last two practical books, oh, I've used this one so much in my own personal life, my own marriage. Ken Sande's Resolving Everyday Conflict for $8. And for a little small book, you're like, why is that $8? Well, it's actually $12. We're selling it for 8, but it's 12. But it's just costs that much. But this book is so helpful. It's worth the price. It's helped me so much in my personal life, my marriage. It really gets to what is underneath the conflict. Not every conflict is a bad conflict. But what is underneath the conflict? He's got this one famous line in the book that says, we must be careful to watch out that our desires become demands. A really good, very helpful, eminently practical book on resolving conflict in daily life. And then I've quoted this book in a couple sermons before on anxiety and rest and worry. But Timothy Lane's book, Living Without Worry, I just got it in, so I don't have a pricing on it, but it'll probably be $8. But very easy book to read, but it really puts into perspective when the enemy tries to assault the smallness of our lives, how little we can really control, and then twists and exploits it into sin. Where the concern we have becomes over concern or under concern, Lane talks about, or the reality that we then go from anxiety, which is, maybe some sense of just realizing how small we are, to anxiousness and worry and restlessness and these things that develop further and further in our lives that are actually sinful. They're not just weaknesses or smallness, it's actually sinful. And then lastly, we'll finish up with a couple devotionals and some apologetic works. I think this book, Can We Trust the Gospels, by Peter Williams, English scholar, is outstanding. It's received tons of awards for its practicality, its scholarship, and its preciseness, and its brevity. Okay, it's only $10, and it's outstanding. I think Peter Williams is a great scholar and worth the read. J. Grisham Machen's famous classic, his apologetic book, Christianian and Liberalism, really is one of my favorite books of all time and goes right at the heart of what is kind of portrayed as Christianity, but is really just religious liberalism, and really, really strikes the heart there. And then for those of you that are still kind of wrestling with Calvinism, or you have friends that are, or you have people that are always asking you questions about it, this is a very good topical guide for $15 called 40 Questions About Calvinism by Wright. and really good practical questions that just kind of go after the topics of Calvinism instead of trying to explain all of it, as a system or some sort, but really goes into it at a question level. That's helpful. And then a couple devotionals, and then a couple final books to recommend here. The first is St. Augustine's Confessions, one of the first Christian autobiographies in history, for $5. This is a book that every Christian needs to have, needs to consult, needs to read. It's so rich and riveting on a personal level. Of course, the Valley of Vision. If you do not have a copy of the Puritan Prayers and Devotionals, you need to have this. We've got 5 or 6 copies in the bookstore for $10, so pretty cheap. And they're ordered by topic or by theme, and so that's very, very helpful. And then, of course, my favorite book on discipleship ever written, returned to numerous times, is Dietrich Bonhoeffer's Discipleship, which is known in America as The Cost of Discipleship because it was printed after his martyrdom. And it's for $10. It's a challenging book, but it kind of gets at the heart of Jesus' teaching in the Sermon on the Mount, maybe in a way that few other books have ever done. And then let's finish with just a commendation of Thomas Watson's A Body of Divinity. And just got a couple copies of these, and I think they sell for almost $30 in Banner, so we're selling them for, I think, $17.50. And beautiful cloth-bound hardback book. But what makes this book so memorable, apart from it being the first book that Banner of Truth ever published back in the 50s, was that it is a commentary on the Westminster Shorter Catechism. So it's the easier part of the catechism or the confession. It's meant for, quick Q&A with what is the confession teaching, which is what we believe the Bible is teaching. And then he gives 5 or 6, pithy statements about it. He explains it in a pastoral sense. And Watson is probably the most memorable of all the Puritans in the way that he speaks, the way that he writes. And so I think that book is a standard. It needs to be had by those that are professing the Reformed and Presbyterian faith because of the way it clarifies and concisely puts forth our faith about what we believe the Bible is teaching. So I hope some of these books are helpful for you. I commend them to you to think through about purchasing some of them, and I'll maybe giving a few away for the holidays as well. So signing off.